So this is my Paul Anka story. Paul Anka. I bet like a lot of people listening to this don't know who that is. And neither did I when I was around, I don't know, 8, 9, 10 years old. And I was downtown here. I was downtown. They were having some kind of street fair. And there were these like 3 or 4, maybe 5 young ladies who probably were like, maybe 13, 14, 15, 16 years old. And they were big kids. They were tall. They were, I was only like 8 or 9 years old, 10 years old at the most. They were big kids. Anyway, so one of the girls said, like I said, there was a fair going on. Actually, it was towards the end of the fair, maybe like right now, like 3 in the afternoon or so. Probably like September, October, something like that. Maybe November, probably September. Sounds like probably fall. Anyway, so one of the girls said, Paul Anka was here. Paul Anka was here. And I'm thinking to myself, who's Paul Anka? Who's Paul Anka? Because these girls were excited. So who's Paul Anka? I had no idea. Okay, so if that happened today, and I was 8, 9, 10 years old, I would probably pull out my phone and just Google Paul Anka, Google his name, and I'd know right away exactly who he was. When he was born, I know everything about. But back then, I had no idea who he was, and I couldn't ask anybody. I mean, if I didn't know who he was, none of my friends would have known either. And I had no idea who he was. I guess, it's so long ago. At the time, I guess he was maybe 18, 19 years old. That is Young. He was really, really young. And if you go online and look at some pictures of him, he was very good looking. He was really, and he was only 18 or 19 or something like that. He had all his hair. The girls, he was like, see, I didn't know it at the time, but he was like a little Elvis Presley. At the time, like I said, I had never heard of him. But looking back, it must have been a real. Now, what was he doing down here? I'm guessing there used to be like a nightclub around here called the Latin Casino, and I'm guessing that's where he was at performing. I'm guessing. Why else? See, back then we didn't have casinos. Atlantic City didn't have casinos. So if you wanted to go see Frank Sinatra, that's where you go, the Latin Casino. So I'm good. So anyway, like these girls are all excited about who Paul Anka was. I was only 8 or 9. Now I would say it took me 10 years before I figured out who he was. 10 years. I'm just saying, boy, if it happened today, I'd go online, Google his name. I'd probably misspell it, but it would auto-correct me. And that would be, but I know everything. Back then, I had no way of knowing who he was at all. And you know what I could have done? See, I was only like 19 years old. I could have gone to the library. library. Ask the librarian to look up to find out who he was. And look it up. There's something called the Guide to Periodical Literature. So, like, let's say a magazine had an article about him, about Paul Anka. In this Guide to Periodical Literature, it would tell you what magazine, what edition, and all that. And I guess I could have, found out something about him. But I had no, I had never heard of the Guide to Periodical Literature. I was only 8 or 9 or 10 years old. And, how long have I been talking? 6 minutes. So, I would say it was about 10 years. I think, it's so long ago. I think I was listening to the radio, the local AM station. This was, nobody listened to FM back then, I don't think. Listening to the local AM. And I think they probably played, Put Your Head on My Shoulder or something like that. And they said, oh, here's the Paul Anka song. And I still, even 10 years later, I had no idea what he looked like. Like I say, I couldn't go online. Like nowadays, go online and you know everything, what they look like, everything. So anyway, so then, I would say it was 10 years before I knew who he was. I still didn't know what he looked like. That's my Paul Anka